Well, I was trying for this artistic background with my new unicorn blanket hung over my screen, and then I realized that I locked the tripod in the cupboard that the screen is covering at the moment. So that's why it's so shaky because I'm holding this with my hand, and I think I'm going to put it down. And now you're going to have a weird angle, but it doesn't matter because I don't care. Oops. Yeah, I really don't care. So I'm here to talk to you guys about horror movies because it's that season, and the depiction of black people and minorities in horror movies, which is something that I find irksome. Now, so there's several elements to discuss about this topic, one of which is freedom of speech and freedom of expression and art, which is obviously something that I consider to be quite important. And as you know, I've been following the Marianne Williamson campaign and the Tulsi Gabbard campaign, and I've also been listening to their positions on these things, and I feel that they're a little different. I think that Tulsi Gabbard is much more for freedom of speech and the press, and quite unequivocal, and maybe even one could say she's sort of hardliner. Whereas Marianne Williamson has concerns about the depiction of violence in the media. Oh yeah, no, I mean there are topics that I thought I had made up my mind on, and then I hear Marianne talk about them, and then I start to think more, which seems to be her talent. Um, I have long found it objectionable. First of all, that we're basing the majority of our horror movies on the Ten Little Indians movie, which it was not a horror movie. It was a murder mystery in whenever it was, 50s, I guess. And then we remodeled it with seven teenagers going to some strange location, three couples and an oddball, and then we bumped them off according to, I don't know, but it looks like they're ranking them according to who is the most important human being. Uh, at least, maybe in all fairness, this is not what they're saying, but like, okay, so you've got the three couples, right? So the oddball is usually like I don't know. I saw one movie where it was a goth, and another one where it was a gay person, and they do not do well. And then there's a black couple, and then there's a slutty couple, or a couple who likes to have sex all the time, and usually, so the black couple gets killed, bumped off, usually after the oddball, and then the slutty couple, because we have to kill them while they're having sex. Also, that's important apparently, and then the remaining couple is usually left alive, usually with the guy having to save the girl from something. And I really hope that this stereotype, archetype, whatever you want to call it, from a mythological, folkloric point of view, is not psychologically trying to tell us which types of human beings are the most valuable. Because if it's the couple who's usually left alive at the end of these movies, then the human race is not advancing very well, because they're usually really dumb and really. Are we like, what are they saying with these movies? What are they saying? Are they saying that we should be homogenous and I don't know. It's like the most mercenary, two-dimensional depiction of survival of the fittest, and then like so unimaginative. Anyway, and I'm tired of it. I have every time, like, since this has been going on since the 80s, and every time I watch a movie where a black person or a person of color or the strange loner gets bumped off so early as if they're being punished for something, I feel sad and I don't like it. And I'm not happy for the people who survived. I'm like, I don't care anymore. So, and okay, so you could say don't watch horror movies. Now, the reason that I watch horror movies is because horror is the film genre in which you have the most, typically, the most depiction of the supernatural. It used to be that there were not as many fantasy movies. That seems to be changing, but fantasy is typically, at least in film, conflated with comedy because the film there's crazy people on the street. Um, the film industry seems to be of the opinion that magic is so absurd and mysticism is so bizarre and out there that it is not possible to depict it in a film without making a joke of it, and you must be ironic throughout. I think there were some exceptions to that, but like I have seen the odd film, usually made in England, that was pretty mystical and strange, and I can't remember a name of one right now, but there have been a few. However, what am I saying? I want to know. Okay, so yeah, okay, so we can argue about this question of violence in films. Now, first of all, like I watched not India, Ari's Aster's Midsummer, and for me it was too violent. And now, am I saying that we should regulate films, the violence in films? I'm not actually saying that. This is more an appeal to creators. Even just for the sake of creativity, mix it up. Like I've heard the claim that there are only five basic storylines that are possible, and and that all the best scripts have been written. I think that they like to say that because they're too lazy to come up with a good script. Like their imaginations are stunted, and I get actually quite enraged when they say that. First of all, you could just, I don't know, have like one oddball and one black person survive at the end. That would be kind of novel. That would already be a hugely refreshing from the 10 Little Indians formula, which I think already, like, apparently that plot line was so great that we had to repeat it and then it became a genre. But it was never actually intended to be a genre. It was one plot line. It was just one plot line. It didn't need to be done again. It was not an interesting idea particularly. Like once it was like, oh, huh, yeah, like you're supposed to wonder who done it, and there's lots of options. It's like a clue game. Wow, but like every time, like we had to see Scream and I Know What You Did Last Summer, and then all these films, and they were all basically 10 Little Indians. And I always find that I am most empathizing with the person who gets killed first. So then I spend the rest of the film kind of sad and pissed off, and I don't like that anyway. So I challenge the notion that all the best scripts have been written. I don't think that even the attempt has been made to write all the best scripts. I think that they are following what they think is a winning formula, and it's flopping. At least I think so. And so the other thing is that we need a little bit of a new genre because if we're talking about films about witches, there are horror movies and fantasy movies, and in the fantasy movies, um, I mean they're sort of okay, but kind of saccharine depiction of witches and not much depth has gone into, and again a little bit too much with the comedy. Um, and then you have the horror movies, which are still very much following a kind of satanic model from the 70s, which is very outdated prejudice. And I noticed that in it's interesting because I was arguing with someone online about Marion Williamson's Peace Department, and they said that it's a ridiculous idea because peace is nothing. And I was so furious that had nothing to say to that. But okay, so yeah, and now that thinking explains why we have war all the time, because nobody can imagine peace. Apparently, there's no purpose to human life without conflict. Um, at least I realized that was not what they were saying, but if enough people feel that they can't imagine peace and that they don't know what peace would look like or what we would do with ourselves, then you can see how that can lead to a restlessness that leads to violence all the time. And I feel that that is reflected in our film industry because certainly the notion is being propagated that you cannot have a good film without copious amounts of negativity, darkness, and conflict and violence. And it's getting worse. I mean, like if I'm because I'm watching a lot of movies from a lot of different eras, from silent movies to movies in the '60s to movies now to review for Halloween, and they're definitely getting more and more and more shocking. Now, Clockwork Orange was kind of even for me now. It's a little shocking, but yeah, like I feel like there's a lot of like and I watched these two movies in a row, Parasite and Midsummer, and it was excessive for me at least. Um, and I don't feel like it adds anything. Like I think they want an excitement in the film, and they're assuming that this is just a formula for excitement. Like salt is a formula for good taste, or cheese or garlic or something, but it's not. Like sometimes you have to be creative to make something good. Whether it's culinary or film or art or whatever. And I feel like there have been films like The Eyes of the Amaryllis or Picnic at Hanging Rock. And yeah, I'll include the Blair Witch Project, which is very dark, but it did not show a little bit, but not a lot of grisliness. And yet it was, for me at least, terrifying. And I found Picnic at Hanging Rock was very unsettling. And the Canadian film To Catch a Killer. So it is totally possible to create an atmosphere that is very tense and menacing and mysterious and dark and all of that kind of mystery that you want, excitement that you want, without necessarily showing copious amounts of dismemberment and I don't know, like just gross pain and very kind of physical fear, which is sort of, I don't know, it's like a cheap shot in a way. Like I don't feel like that's necessarily the most artistic way to portray fear. And I feel like in the case of Ari Aster's film, he didn't need it. I think his film was already plenty scary without the extra that he added, which I feel like was more just to keep up with the level of gruesomeness that seems to be trending right now. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, so the title of this video is, what are we saying to people? Like if you're saying that you want freedom of speech and freedom of expression in art, that's great. If that's what you're doing, if you're actually exploring various different kinds of film. But what I see happening is that there is a trend of violence which is being followed almost religiously. Like we have to do it. Or else, I don't know what would happen. People will not buy tickets to the movies. Apparently, I'm sure that is the fear that they have. But, and then the feel-good movies are so sad. Like, they always make me cry so much. And well, it's usually someone dying of cancer or something, and that's called a feel-good movie. I mean, fuck off. that's not feel-good. It doesn't make me feel good. Anyway, so this very rambly video, and I'm nearly incoherent. I will leave this there. I want. I feel like not only more could be done for Black people in America, I think more could be done for Black people in film. Stop killing them in films. That'd be nice. I personally, as a white person, would like to stop seeing Black people getting killed in films because I realize it's just a film, but that's not an excuse to do it again and again and again and again. I don't think that's a nice thing to repeat incessantly. So if you absolutely must kill people, kill the all-American white guy, or I don't know, the whiny princess, or I don't know, someone different, or leave them. I know, leave them all alive at the end, all seven teenagers. That would be like the earth would crack and the sky would fall, wouldn't it? Anyway, just make some new plot lines, and don't feel like you absolutely have to have a body count just to make a film scary. So I will leave this there, and blessed be Season of the Witch.